I believe, was the one that has to go backwards. Has to go back
Yes.
to
Again, is this
P&Z,
you?
isn't that
Yes,
correct?
well,
Yeah.
Daryl did the Chippeways.
Oh,
But my calendar said we were working till 10 o'clock tonight, so.
at least, from what I
At
see.
least.
Well, already we got number F pulled,
Yeah.
so
Which one is that?
it's with the.
Signs?
No, signs we're doing signs. We're not doing the second one. Appeals and reinforcements and modifications, regulations.
You got my email, Chris?
Yeah, I sure did. Thank you.
You just told everyone he owned the property.
Yeah, that was sort of crazy.
And that's why I was yelling all the time.
Yeah.
You need to be careful.
Yeah. That's an adventure there. Yes, sir.
Yep, my drives, thank you.
Dan Trout wanted to give some numbers on building permits.
Oh, okay.
Is it all right if I invite him
Yeah.
to come to the podium for a quick 2-minute update?
You bet. That'd be great.
Thank you, Mayor.
We were just making fun of all the electrical permits out there instead of the other stuff. Yeah.
He'll keep it short, it'll only be about
Okay.
How are you?
He's just gonna come up and complain I haven't paid for
Doing all right?
Yeah.
You're red line now, huh? Beverly, how are you? I'm here, I'm doing great, thank you.
Good morning.
Hello.
Thank
How
you.
doing?
I'm doing great. I know, everybody says, I
Flag Day ceremony at Memory Park.
Vehicle.
I've been to that, they do a good ceremony.
Oh, cool.
It's a four-wheel drive.
June the 14th.
It's just an invitation.
Okay.
Oh, watch out, the animals are here. Oh, no, it's the elks.
Yeah. Hello. Good morning. And you're doing the presentation on the
Yes.
I haven't seen the miniature, I've seen the pictures.
Oh, I've seen it, sorry, you missed.
Fine.
see it.
Okay, cool.
We had to get together.
Easy enough. Sounds good. Thank you.
He lives a
And
sheltered
I'm-
life, he doesn't get out much.
We had a bunch of pilots.
All right.
Good to have you.
One of the guys.
I know. I didn't bring my line shirt today, I'm sorry. You gotta be the king of the jungle, you know how it is.
This is Dan Trout.
Crosses the T's. What he wanted to do was he wanted to go up there because it was a bunch of kids all the way up there, 4 years old to teenagers. And he said they need to learn this stuff. Sure. But
Hey, young man.
Fire department is down.
What is this, Old Home Week? Yes. Go ask him. I don't remember. I know the other ones. He didn't have his bag.
There's a lot of stuff in here. There's a lot of stuff in here.
Checking to see if Phyllis is all wound up.
Would you do me, please?
But she went back so far I couldn't get by, so I
Yeah,
had to be
yeah.
polite. Did you get his name?
Yeah, sure did.
That's, no, that's Daryl. You ought to get here on time and pay attention. Well, you weren't paying attention. I know, you're broke. You couldn't pay attention, so you must be broke.
Nietzschman. Too broke to pay attention. Yeah, the other one I used to hear was, "I'm so broke I can't even pay my respects."
I'm too broke to pay attention.
Yeah.
It's a song.
Is it? Oh, that sounds about right.
Yeah, it's gotta be copyright.
Paul's Nietzschman.
Yeah.
We are stacking them up
We
tonight.
haven't seen it in the parking lot yet.
You gotta come over to the senior center.
Oh.
Well, the last thing I'm worried about is fixing the headlights on it, because they don't drive at night, right?
Okay.
So I'm doing everything else.
Well, I was there this morning. Where were you?
Sorry?
I was there this morning. I was at the senior center this morning.
I may be over.
No, because I put my order in for dinner. The line for having dinner. So I talked to the
Yeah, one
cook.
of my lady friends is having a birthday party over there.
Oh, okay.
A lot of cars in the parking lot. I thought there were only one.
They're all hiding out in the lobby.
I don't think so. There were many out
Scent.
there when I walked by. Still four?
Oh, good, my wife, well, she has it occasionally.
They're tough. Yeah.
That's what she does. Put in the room, turn out all the lights.
Yeah, that's all you can do. All you can do. Oh, you bet.
Hey, let's kick the tires and light the fires.
Well, that would be rude to start at 2 minutes early.
Rude is my name.
Woo- How rude.
How can be my first name? That's okay.
All right.
That's, yeah.
That would be cool.
The world has changed tonight.
Yeah, the world has changed tonight. Cool. All right. Yeah. Okay, Dan Trout's gonna speak. All three of our e-tickets. Okay. Go ahead and light her up. All right. Let's go ahead and do it. Liz, are you ready? Okay. And you're ready to do the invoke? Okay. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Please rise and remove your hats for the invocation. Mr. Best.
Our Father, who art in heaven, we humbly bow our heads at the start of this council meeting. We're thankful for the stewardship the town has entrusted in us, and we pray that we would go ahead and conduct the business in a manner pleasing unto thee. We ask thee to be with our military, who are home in abroad, that they are protecting our freedoms and our liberties, that we're able to go ahead, and we thank them for their diligentness. We ask you to watch over them and bring them home safely. We thank thee for the town that we have and for the opportunity we have to serve thee. We ask for these favors and blessings. In the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Ms. Hart, may we have the roll call?
Well, good evening. Councilmember McKee. Here. Councilmember Turner.
Here.
Councilmember Wojak.
Here.
Councilmember Hatch.
Here.
Councilmember Best.
Here.
Vice Mayor Croft.
Here.
And Mayor Marley.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Introductions, presentations, and proclamations, we have none. Call to the public. Call to the public is an opportunity for the public to address the council concerning a subject that is not on the agenda. Public comment is encouraged. Individuals are limited to speak for 3 minutes. Total time for call to the public may be up to 30 minutes per meeting. Council action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date, or responding to criticism. Do we have anyone that wishes to speak to call to the public? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Beverly Swanty, and I'm here representing the Chino Valley Elks. I am chairman of Flag Day, and I'm here to invite everyone in this community to attend a special Flag Day ceremony that we have every year. This year, Flag Day just happens to fall on Saturday, fortunately, so we're having a ceremony at Memory Park. It starts at 10 a.m. in the morning, and it will be like a welcome, and the American Legion Honor Guard from Prescott will be in to post the colors. We will have a special ceremony where they teach you the folding, the 13 folds of the flag, and then the Elks will take over and they will do the history of the American flag. We have a stand, a huge stand, and we have a flag representing every flag that flew over our country, from the pine tree, which was the first, all the way through to the 50 stars. And then we have one for the MIA.
Okay.
We're hoping to make this a community event where we can help teach our residents, including the young, the special meaning of our nation's symbol, the American flag. I hope everyone will come and share with us in this opportunity to praise our flag. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was June 14th, 2014.
14th is the actual Flag Day
Okay.
date.
All right. And that's at 10 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. There was someone else for call to the public on this side? No? Yes, sir.
My name is Ronald Maines, and I'm a Chino Valley resident. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. I attended most of the meetings for the water and sewer project, and with the bond issue now going to the voters, that $13.5 million weighs on my mind a bit. And also on my mind, I'm vaguely...
Excuse me for a second, Mr. Maines. The bond issue is on our agenda tonight, so I'm hoping what you're going to talk about isn't the bond issue? Okay, okay. Because if you do have stuff to speak on to the bond issue, we're going to be discussing it about 6 items down.
No, that's just the lead-in. Here's the question.
Okay, yes, sir.
I'm also vaguely aware of the $20 million of the debt that the town already has.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried researching it because I wanted to learn about it, and I didn't have much luck. If the information is available on the website, I didn't know where to find it. So So I'd like to request an accounting of that 20 million. When it was incurred, for what purpose, the terms of the obligation, how it's being paid. I know the staff likes to do PowerPoint presentations. I like them. But I want to be able to digest it, and I request to have a hard copy, something I can read and take home with me.
Okay, thank you.
Question?
No, sir. We're not really allowed to interact back and forth unless there's a clarification question. We can, other than that, we can just direct staff. Okay. All
Thank
right.
you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith. If you would have Mr. Duffy contact Mr. Maines, if you would. Okay. Thank you.
You know, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I've had questions from other people about it might be a good idea to post it on the website. If it's not there, I tried looking after people asked me the same question.
Okay.
And I can't find it, and it probably should be on there. If it is, we need to make a bigger point of showing where it is. So it might be a good idea to post that on the website if we could.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Smith, can you get that to Mr. Duffy also? All right. And there was several other hands, others for call to the public. None? Okay. Call to the public. You don't have anything, Bertie? No.
She'll talk to you later.
I'll tell you, every time I feel like taking a chance, I go and have you cut my hair, because having Bertie next to your neck with a razor is sort of it's some kind of an experience. Okay. Yeah.
The sign that says caution women with razors.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. All right. We have no more for call to the public. We'll be closing that. Response to the public is an opportunity for the mayor to inform the public about how town officials address matters raised during call to the public at a previous meeting, and we don't have any from our previous call to the public. The next item is current event summaries and reports. This item's for information only, and the mayor, any council member, or town manager may present a brief summary or report of current events or ask a staff member to provide the same. Presentation on information requested by the mayor and council will be made and questions answered. No action will be taken. Do we have any reports from this side? No. Any reports from this side? Okay. I will not have a mayor's report tonight because we have a full agenda and we've got a lot of material to cover. So our town manager, status report by town manager Robert Smith regarding town accomplishments and current or upcoming projects. I believe you had somebody that was to speak.
Yes, sir, Mayor. Thank you. I would like to yield my 2 minutes to Dan Trout.
Okay.
I'd like to have a little information provided to council on building permitting.
Okay, thank you.
I just put together, we've been wanting to come to you guys quarterly with this stuff. Basically, I just, real quick, I have what we did in 2012, 13, and so far in 14. And you see the total number of building permits in 12 was 205, which included 10 single-family residences and 5 manufactured homes. In 13, we did a total number of 268 with 20 single-family residents and 11 manufactured homes. And so far this year, we've done 127 building permits, 12 single-family residents, and 7 manufactured homes. So, and typically, June through October are our busiest months, so we anticipate to see those numbers climb.
Excellent.
And we suspect it will be between 275 and 300 building permits for this calendar year.
Excellent.
So and also, we're looking at some new permit tracking software, which will make this a lot easier to report to you guys. I included, just in case you're interested, if you want to look at it later, these sheets that show the breakdown of what was, permits were additions, barns, commercial, et cetera. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Ma'am, you had a
If
question?
I could ask for a clarification on the last page, although it says 1 of 1. Where it says total value, is that number at the bottom, how much we've taken in permit fees, or is that the value of the home?
That's the value of all the permits together. Not
So
what we
$2
took in.
million?
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, continuing onwards. We have several consent agenda items. Does anyone wish to pull any consent agenda items? No? No. Ms. Hart, may we have the consent agenda?
Okay. Excuse me. 6A, consideration and possible action to support, join Prescott Valley's proposed resolution to the Arizona League of Municipalities to authorize municipalities to use a sampling method to determine population estimates, housing vacancy rates for mid-decennial population updates. Wow. Okay. 6B, consideration and possible action to approve resolution number 14-0135, adopt a tentative budget for fiscal year 2014-2015, and proposed expenditure limit for same year in the amount of $29,800. Oh, I'm sorry, a little bit more. 29. Excuse me, 29,866,774. There you
Okay.
go. That's it.
All right, thank you. Chair would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve consent agenda items 6A and B.
Second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to move item 8A before we go into executive session.
Okay. Oh, by the way, motion carries. All right. Item 8A is consideration and possible action to approve disbanding the Town of Chino Valley State Route 89 Utility Project Citizen Committee. We have a motion to move that in front of our executive session so that we can move to disband that committee if the council is pleased. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to move item 8A in front of our executive session. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Ms. Hart, I believe you have the certificates? Okay. And we'll be, if it pleases the council, I can give the certificates of appreciation to these folks first. Okay, all right. These are our certificates of appreciation, just thanking our citizens for serving on the Citizens Bond or Utility Project Citizens Committee. Miss Carrie Bloom. Not available. Lee Dudley. Is Lee here tonight? Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, yeah. Okay, Lee didn't want to stay up here. All right. Mr. Michael Edmonds. Thank you. All right. I suppose I ought to read one of these. It says, on behalf of the town of Chino Valley, I'd like to thank you for your service on the Chino Valley State Route 89 Utility Project Citizens Committee. I want you to know that we have appreciated your volunteerism and willingness to share your expertise and talents on the town's behalf. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Mr. Scott Freite. Thank you. Mr. Bud Hainan. Thank you, Bud. Thank you. All right. Mr. Robert McCauley. Thank you. Mr. Corey Mendoza. Is Corey here tonight? No. Okay. Mr. Gary Warren. Thank you, Gary. All right. Here you go. Appreciate it. Now that we've told them we appreciate them, may we have a motion to disband them?
Move to approve the disbanding of the Town of Chino Valley SR 89 Utility Project Citizen Committee.
Second it.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and 2 seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will now be moving into executive session, and as we've explained to you folks in the past, we've moved the executive session up so that, especially tonight, we've got several big-ticket items that we don't want to be dealing with at 11 o'clock at night. We'd rather deal with them while we're fresh and come out and tell you the results of the executive session. So the council may vote to recess the regular meeting and hold an executive session, which will not be open to the public for the following purposes. Pursuant to ARS 38431.03A3 for discussion or consultation for legal advice with the town attorney regarding requirements of the provisional settlement agreement with Cortez Enterprises Incorporated and options for the town. Item B is pursuant to ARS 38481.03A1 for discussion or consideration of employment, assignments, appointment, promotion, dismissal, salary of Town Magistrate John Walker, and pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A4 for discussion or consultation with the town attorney in order to consider its position and instruct the town attorney regarding the town's position regarding the contract with Town Magistrate John Walker. And item C, pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A4 for discussion or consultation with the town attorney in order to consider the town's position and instruct the town attorney regarding the town's position regarding a contract with Prescott Sportsman's Club Incorporated related to management services for the Chino Valley Shooting Range that is the subject of negotiations. Do we have a motion to go into executive
Move to
session?
recess the regular meeting and hold an executive session.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. We don't need a recess, do we? No. Okay. We'll go into exec session and be out as quick as we can. Council members would go ahead and turn their microphones back on. Okay. All right. We're now back in session. The council will be placing item 1 from our executive session, the provisional settlement agreement with Cortez Enterprises, will be placed on our next council meeting agenda. Item number 2 was our review of the magistrate, and the council did the review of the magistrate. And item number 3 was our revisions, or the Prescott Sportsman's Club agreement. And we have instructed our attorney to make the revisions that we've instructed and to send it to the Prescott Sportsman's Club for review. Moving onward to action items. Action item B, we've already done A. So item B is consideration and possible action to allow the Elks to erect a Hot Shots monument. Mr. Klaus Nietzschman.
I've touched it before.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Klaus Nietzschman, and I represent the Chino Valley Elks Lodge. And we're planning to erect a monument to the Hot Shots. You have a miniature model in front of you that you could look at. The full version will be 76 inches tall by 6 foot across, and it would need a little bit extra space for a concrete base that it will be placed upon. And what we're asking today is we're asking to get a spot in the front of Town Hall between the building and the sidewalk where the gravel is, wherever it's convenient or where it would fitting. This is one of the most visible spots in town, and the purpose of this is, of course, this needs to be visible for people when they go by, walk by, drive by. They see it, that they remember what these 19 people did. They gave their life for us in the community and all the other communities they worked in state and out of state. And we're all aware that as time goes on, people forget. But if we have this out here, at least this community will not forget. And that's our purpose.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to answer questions if any of you has any.
All right. Any questions from this side? Okay. The questions that I had with Mr. Neichman were regarding the funding for the base and that kind of stuff, and he said they were going to try and raise funding for the entire project rather than having the town.
Didn't get that?
The funding for the entire project, for the base and for the sculpture itself, was going to be raised by the Elks.
We will fund it, yes.
Okay, yes, sir. And whenever you folks are done with that, can I get that back, please? Just for the sake of our audience, on one side is a plaque with the names of the 19 firefighters. On the other side is a plaque that says, on June 30th, 2013, 19 Granite Mountain hotshots gave their lives battling the Yarnell Hill fire. We will never forget their sacrifice. And then on the other side is a hotshots prayer, and on the other side is an insignia for the Granite Mountain Interagency Hotshot Crew R3 Prescott Fire. Did anyone on this side of the council have any questions? If it would please the council, as far as the location is concerned, we could turn that over to, I believe, Mr. Bartels would be in charge of grounds, and we could have the Elks Club interact with him after this. Would that be, or would you prefer that they visit with you and you connect them with Mr. Bartels?
Yes, sir. We've got several staff members we'd like to bring in
Okay.
in terms of accommodating a monument like that.
Okay.
So staff would like to have the opportunity to meet with the Elks and come up with some details that we could bring back to council.
You bet, you bet. That'd be excellent. Thank you.
Okay, I'll be the contact.
All right.
You have my number.
Would you like this back now, or I can?
You want to be entrusted with it.
Could you please make the next one out of styrofoam? There you go. All right, thank you. I'm good, thank you. Excellent. All right. Item C is consideration and possible action to approve the 2014 road maintenance program with the additional amount of $45,000 above the already approved amount of $190,000 on September 10th, 2013. Funds to come from HERF Road Materials. Mr. Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Basically, we're coming together, staff's coming forward for a budget adjustment. We've already approved $190,000 of our road material budget for our road resurfacing program. If I could direct you to page 33 of your agenda, this schedule summarizes where we're at. As you know, we've budgeted $300,000 this fiscal year for road materials. That's the typical line item. The Roads Department does everything from resurfacing to crack seal to pothole mix. Everything is put in there. And earlier in the year, we approved the use of $190,000 for the road resurfacing projects. As you can see, what we've spent to date, that we have a significant amount left in the other road maintenance, about $66,000. So what we're proposing is taking $45,000 of that and moving it over to road surfacing to increase its total budget to $235,000 before the end of the fiscal year, to get more material on the road.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
What was included in the other road maintenance? For instance, are we taking money out of those roads that need to be graded, rather than?
No.
What was that other money for?
Yeah, well, we just budgeted $300,000. We didn't allocate it for specific things, except for we do crack sealing, we do pothole repair. And so we do have enough money in remaining to complete all the work that we'll need to do in that line item. So we're not
I'm
shorting,
confused.
we're not shorting other road
You
maintenance.
said you're
but-
taking it out of the other road maintenance that remained?
Right, we're not going to spend all
That money
we
wasn't
budgeted.
allocated, is what you're
It
saying?
wasn't specifically allocated.
Thank you.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So we don't have as many potholes as we thought we would have.
I guess not.
All right, cool. Any questions from this side? Okay, excellent. All right, the chair would entertain a motion then.
Move to approve the 2014 road maintenance program with the additional amount of $45,000 above the already approved amount of $190,000.
Okay.
Second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item D, consideration and possible action to adopt a motion to accept previously dedicated and recorded roadway easements related to the Road 1 East roadway project over Yavapai County Assessor parcels 102-01-001M FNA, 102-01-01M, 102-01-241C, 102-01-219G FNA, 102-01-01W, 102-01-219H FNA, 102-01-01R, 102-01-223E FNA, 102-01-01K, 102-01-216A, 102-01-216. Mr. Smith, are you available to speak to us on this? Oh, yes, ma'am.
Mayor Marley, before he starts in, when you were reading the numbers of the parcels off, you misread one number.
Okay.
I believe it should have been 102-01-0, no, I'm going to mess it up. 102-01-214C, you said 241C.
Oh, okay.
And just as a point of clarification, the FNA is formerly known as.
Oh, okay.
And when these easements were dedicated, for example, the parcel, which is now 102-01-001M, as in Mary, was at that time 102-01-01 capital M. So it's just a
okay.
change in the parcel number that the county did as opposed to anything else.
Okay.
It's the same property.
So when I read that, I should have said formerly known as instead of
Yeah,
FNA?
probably.
Okay, easy enough. Yes, ma'am.
I'm disappointed that we don't have copies of these documents included in our paperwork. All we have is the statement, and I think we should have seen those. I think it's wrong for us to be considering this without seeing those original documents.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Smiley, if it's okay, oh, go ahead.
I do have the original documents, and I was on vacation, so I didn't prepare this agenda
I would like
item.
to have time to review them. Seeing them at this point, when we're right here sitting considering this isn't right. We should be able to review those and take our time with it. This is exactly the problem we've had in the past when things are dumped on us at the last minute.
Okay. Just as a point of order, would it be just as easy for me to go ahead and read these back through again and take my time on them? And that way we're sure that we have all the parcel numbers read correctly rather than a correction on them?
If you would like, that's fine.
Yeah.
The only one that you actually misread was the 214, you read as 241.
Okay.
But
Yes.
everything else was read correctly.
Okay, I don't want to have something misread that causes a problem.
Right.
All
And-
right. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Mayor and Council, item 8D. This set of easements was provided and recorded against these properties in 1986.
Okay.
And at the time, I believe all of these properties were in the county at that point. In our due diligence of searching through to make sure that all of the information is there, we did not find a formal acceptance from the county for the easements in 1986. And we don't find at the county assessor's office record of the easements shown on their map. And so pursuant to the town's applicable policies, the town defines a right-of-way as something that has been dedicated and accepted. And the town has not accepted the easements. We don't find a record of that in 1986. We don't find a record of the county's acceptance of these easements, but these are the easements that were recorded against the properties in 1986.
Okay.
So we're asking council to perfect the administrative documents that we have because we don't have that acceptance in our hands.
Okay.
And all that's required of the town is for it to accept the easements.
Okay, as a housekeeping item. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, you had a question?
Is this part of the easement question that the Chino Gulf Range is questioning whether or not we have a right to build one east across his property?
Yes, sir, this is that Road 1
And
East
he
extension.
has submitted a letter over a month ago requesting that somebody explain to him how we are intending to do this without the easements, and nobody has ever answered that letter to him, right?
We've had our attorneys working on a draft for Mr. Chantos, yes, sir. We have not submitted that draft to him.
But you want us to vote on it now.
Okay,
Mr.
as soon as Mr. Wojcik's done, are you done for the moment, Mr.
Well,
Wojcik?
I'm confused at how we're gonna get this thing through with a sleight of hand of some sort.
Okay,
Also,
okay.
if
Yes,
I may
ma'am.
add to that, he just said some of them are on a map, but there's nothing in writing. And that makes what Mr. Chantos is saying certainly questionable. I'd like to see those documents, and they ought to be here in front of the public, so that if anybody has a question, including Mr. Chantos, they are here for everyone to see up front.
Okay,
Absolutely, I agree.
okay,
I'm ready to move forward.
okay. Yes, sir.
I
Mr.
have a
Turner.
question. I agree in theory with what you're talking about, but I guess I'm a little confused there is, these are dedicated and recorded.
But they're not, they're
So-
only on a map.
No, they are dedicated and recorded as documents, and the book and map number is cited in your, I believe, on the second page of your staff report. These are the easements recorded in the Yavapai County Recorder's Office on July 15th, 1986. Each of these documents was identified in the title report that we obtained for the right-of-way that's going to be worked on Road 1 East.
Okay,
But we need the title report here in our documents.
okay.
I apologize for that. I thought it was in your documents, but having been on vacation last
Okay.
week,
All right,
couldn't
thank
double
you.
check.
My vote will be no, because we don't have the proper documents.
Okay, we'll be asking for a vote here in a moment. Insofar as the agenda item title, it says consideration and possible action to adopt a motion to accept a previously dedicated and recorded roadway easement, which I believe was your question, right, Mr. Turner?
Right, and I certainly don't have a problem with it from what I'm understanding here. By the same token, are we hurting anything by getting what Councilwoman Hatch is asking for to
Okay,
review before we vote? I don't know.
Okay. Getting a map of the easement?
I guess to
Okay.
physically see it is what you're asking for, to
I
see
would
it on a
like to
map?
see it, yeah.
Mhm.
I would like to see the documents, the title report, and the map.
Okay. Mr. Wojcik?
I can tell you for sure, we're gonna end up in court over this if we go forward, because I've already been warned of that by one of our citizens.
Okay.
Because, no, but I don't understand, if we know all this, why didn't we answer the letter to Mr. Chantos
Mhm.
a long time ago?
Okay. Thank you. And that's been in our attorney's hands.
And
Yes, ma'am.
If I could explain, Mayor. We have been going back and forth with the title company because of the change in the parcel numbers and because of the, well, that's county. County changes the parcel numbers when the lot splits, so don't shake your head, please.
I know that, but we should have those
That
documents.
wasn't you shaking your head.
Yes, yes.
I understand that, and I apologize for the fact that you don't have the documents. I will say that the documents are not a map. They are individually recorded documents that give the legal description and the parcel number related to that easement.
Okay.
And the reason why the council obviously hasn't adopted them is because they were dedicated when this property was in the county.
Okay.
And we were also looking to see if there was if there were any pre-annexation agreements talking about the easements. So we've been through a lot of paperwork, so that's the reason.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Smiley. Yes, ma'am.
If I may ask Ms. Smiley?
Yes.
On this, the information that you have that is not here tonight, does it show the parcel number as well as the formerly known as parcel number?
Councilmember McKee, no. It shows the former parcel number, because that was the parcel number at the time that the document was recorded.
Okay.
So subsequent to that, the parcel numbers have changed. The piece of property hasn't changed. It's
Right.
just the number that the county gives it for tax purposes. That's what a parcel number is.
Okay. Excellent. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I would like to announce to our town attorney that she can't tell me I can't shake my head if I want to.
I agree.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Excuse me for a second. I'll tell you what. As chairman, had I seen you shaking your head or had I heard her interrupted, I would have asked you, okay?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. You had wanted to take a brief intermission, one of you folks? Was that?
Sure.
We could do that, and then we could come back and address this subject.
Make a motion that we take 5 minutes.
Take 5 minutes. It was a fairly long executive session, so. We have a motion to take a 5-minute recess.
Second.
Do we have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We will meet back here in 5 minutes. back in session. I just received from our town's attorney the unofficial copies of all the documents. There's basically legal descriptions, the east 50 feet of the north 4,189.94 feet of the east half of section 3, and so on and so forth. These were the items that were asked if we could have them in our packet. Yes, ma'am.
Just want to clarify, the county never accepted these? There's no record of them ever accepting these easements, is that correct?
Councilmember Hatch, Mayor Marley, I'm not certain. We have not been able to find anything, any official action of the county to accept them as right-of-way. However, there is a dirt road, and they've been used as right-of-way. At least most portions of it has. So, that is one way to accept a dedication, is to use it. So the public has been using this as right-of-way. It's a formality for the council to accept it, especially since it was in the county before and at the time of the dedication. So my guess is that what happened was the town just assumed that the county had accepted it, and the town didn't accept other roads that were county roads at the time of annexation, and this one didn't get accepted either.
Okay.
But now, since there's a question as to whether or not the town actually has an easement, even though the easement's been dedicated and used for almost, 40 years, if my math is right, 38 years, we were recommending the council to just close the loop and formally accept them as kind of a dotting all the Ts or dotting all the Is and crossing all the Ts kind of procedure.
As a housekeeping item.
Right,
Yes,
right.
ma'am.
We didn't anticipate that there would be questions, and apparently Susan, who prepared the item, just didn't realize that there would be a need for council to review all the documents because they're publicly available on the county website.
Okay, and these documents are publicly available on the county website?
Yeah, I
correct?
just went on the county recorder's website. You can
Okay.
get an official copy, or you can get an unofficial copy. I just printed it off as quickly as
Easy
possible, so.
enough. Thank you. You, Ms. Hatch, and then
Yeah,
Mr. Wojcik.
I accept what you're saying, but this is exactly where we had the discussion last week about things being thrown at us and not having time to review them in the past. You're telling us we just need to rubber stamp this. We as a council have a duty to review these things, whether some don't want to and others do. That's one thing. But I, for one, do review things and I match things. And you'll find out later on, I found some errors in this proposed document that's coming up. I really appreciate what you've done, but we need to have things in advance.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wojcik?
I find it hard to say that we didn't think there'd be any questions when the particular individual's been before us and written letters to us and everything, questioning whether or not we have a right to put a road through his property. There's an unanswered letter outstanding right now that hasn't been answered by the town.
Okay, easy enough. And, well, this was all on the website insofar as our agenda. This is a public document, our agenda. And so this information was out there. If there's, and I believe there have been some folks that have contacted the town regarding this item. So, no other questions on this side? No other questions on this side? Oh, you were going to move that we table, or were you going to?
I'm going to make a motion that we table this item to the next meeting and get all the documents together and
Second.
come back with
Okay,
the legal description.
okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving onwards. Item E, consideration, we've had a request to move up our item G. Could I get a motion to that effect?
Move that we move item G up and into the next item.
Okay.
Second it?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to move item G up. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Item G is a presentation, consideration, and possible action to approve ballot language for the general obligation bond election. You fellas drove up from Phoenix. Thank you for coming up. Mr. Smith, would you introduce these folks?
I would like to. Thank you, Mayor. First, Mayor and Council, I'd like to provide a preface to the agenda item. In our discussions with Mr. Reeder and Cafiso, that we began talking about the kinds of information the council might appreciate to consume at their meeting. Mr. Reeder and Mr. Cafiso are here to talk about the bond process in general, the types of information and products that council will be required to produce. They have also, as you'll find in your council packet, created some draft material for council's consideration and for discussion purposes. There are some inconsistencies in the language that are in those items. They were produced very rapidly so that council would have an opportunity to review the kinds of documents that are required and how those documents are typically drafted. So with that, I would introduce Mr. Mark Reeder. Mark, if you could chat with the council a little bit about the process and the products first before we dive into the language and the attachments with Mr. Cafiso.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, good evening. Mark Reeder with Stiefel Nicholas. I think as you're aware, we're the town's financial advisor in connection with your possible call for a bond election. We know that we've shared some information with the council. I think you have a general idea of the tax ramifications of a potential bond election call, I believe. And if not, we're obviously glad to come up and have another session on that prior to the formal call. I think this evening is really, as Mr. Smith said, more educational for you. We know that you're about to make a big decision, probably in the next 30 days or so, relative to call a bond election. And so we are following staff's recommendation to just be here, answer your questions. I think what you have in front of you tonight is a draft ballot question. Certainly not cast in concrete by any means. It's more of a technical legal document that voters will see as part of the voter information pamphlet. And I know the last couple of times I've been up here, I've handed out some draft voter information pamphlets. We will prepare one for the town. It's got to be prepared in conjunction with state law. It's got to be reviewed by your bond counsel, Mike Cafiso, and his colleague, Paul Gales, and also the city attorney. So we're going to start to work on that document, which will describe, among other things, why the town has called a bond election, what you're going to use the money for, what are the benefits locally, so forth and so on. So that's a document that's in process. We're going to start working on that. We want to take our time. We want to make sure that document is, while it's kind of a legalese document, we do want it to be informative to your voters. So we're going to start working on that. And then you have in front of you kind of a ballot question, and I'm going to invite Mr. Cafiso up to kind of walk you through, since it's more of a legalese type thing, and answer any and all questions you might have relative to that document.
Okay. Did you have a question before?
No, by
Mr.
matter of correction, you've got the wrong address in there throughout your documents.
Okay. Okay, no
You
problem.
got it on Palomino, if you do. a
Yeah, no
search.
problem.
On B1 and C1, same correct address.
So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Cafiso. He's your bond attorney. You're going to help with the election. I'm going to turn it over to Michael, and I'm also here to answer any questions the council might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Go ahead, Mike.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Michael Cafiso. I'm with the law firm Greenberg Traurig in Phoenix. Just by way of quick introduction, my law firm's an international law firm, 1,800 lawyers around the world. We have 50 or so in Phoenix, 4 of us practice in the area of public finance full-time. And I've been working for the town of Chino Valley for probably the last 20 years, I guess, whenever you guys need to borrow money. Good for you guys. It hasn't been very often, but this is one of the times it's being proposed. So, so we have been working with staff to pull together what's going to be necessary to hold a bond election. We've been discussing a fairly large spectrum of issues, not only the bond election itself, but once we hold the election, how would the money be borrowed? What sort of considerations will go into to what's going to be financed, how it's going to be repaid, those sorts of things. So it's been a fairly broad conversation to this point. The resolution before you is very much a draft, and I apologize for the incorrect addresses. I had a legal assistant fill in a lot of the boilerplate. The idea, though, was to get this resolution before you, and I say to you in all sincerity, it's refreshing to be able to be in front of you this soon with this. I mean, this doesn't need to be done till late June, early July. Normally, we're sitting around the mid part of June rushing to get this sort of thing done. So you guys are way ahead of the program on this, and I think that's a nice place to be at this point. So I'm glad we're here tonight. We do, when I say we, Mark Reeder's firm and my firm do a lot of this sort of stuff around the state, bond elections. School districts a lot, cities and towns probably less so, counties even less. So this is a document that's fairly consistent in terms of the form. The reason we wanted to get it in front of you quickly was because we wanted you to take a look, as Mr. Reeder said, at the ballot question, but probably as importantly, the informational pamphlet. The way these elections are held, it's important to remember that you have really two constituencies, even though you may not know they exist at any given time. One is those who are in favor, and for those who are opposed. You have to represent both groups. You're sitting up there as the mayor and council, and while you're sitting there as the mayor and council, you represent all citizens in the community. That doesn't mean that individually you can't say how you feel about passage or not of the bond election. But once the election is called, you're required by common law to be unbiased in your presentation of facts relating to the bond election. As a matter of fact, the legislature in the last session made it even clearer with these informational pamphlets that we have to make them content neutral. In other words, they have to fairly represent why you're doing this, the projects you plan to finance, what it's going to cost, that sort of thing. So again, it's kind of important to get it in front of you. Before the election is called, you have some flexibility in terms of maybe a more open discussion about why it may be important to the community, and airing those kinds of things, getting information from staff about about those subjects. But once the election is called, you have to resist the temptation to maybe to support passage or opposition of the election. And so, again, part of the reason we bring this to you is to give you a chance to start looking at it, to give staff and us some direction in helping us draft what you want it to say. Mr. Reeder mentioned the ballot question. If you look at this document, the first few pages of it are technical provisions that relate to how the election's called, the things we need to have you be able to do with the county in terms of having the county act as the entity that'll be responsible for holding the election. It used to be that your county required mail-only ballots. The last elections that were held in this county were all required to be mail ballot. There's been a change in the statute, and you don't even have that option this time around. So this will be a polling place election, which is something you need to keep consider. You know, there's different psychologies for different kinds of elections. Some people think polling place elections are better than mail ballot elections. Other people feel the other way. So it's a matter of philosophy. But you really don't have any choice in this election. It's going to be a polling place election, and you need to keep that in mind as you go through this process. The ballot question, as Mr. Reeder mentioned, is what the voters are voting on. It is the technical, here's what you're going to be allowed to do in the future. When we have to decide in the future whether or not you can spend money on a certain part of a project or for some related part of a project, this is where we go. This is the permission you get from the voters. So the informational pamphlet I'm going to show you in a minute has other information in it, but it's aspirational at this point. It's what you think you're going to do. It's your best guess at this time in terms of what the projects are going to be. Any specific description in there is, again, is aspirational. The limitations are in this question. So one thing you have to decide in this question is, Do you want a more open question, or do you feel the voters are going to want very specific language? The better option is always to have more flexibility. You're not going to know till you start to really get down into a lot of the detail whether exactly what you put in the question is going to be the right thing if you use too specific a language. So we try to use more broader language than you might otherwise expect in this question. But you need to help us because you know your voters. Would the voters prefer a more specific question? Would they be more likely to vote yes if that's the hope for the council before the election is called? Is there a better way we could frame this question? I drafted the question with a very broad sense of the projects. It's wastewater collection and treatment, water processing and distribution. And it's very general in terms of that authority, which leaves a lot of capacity to do a lot of different things. When the voters go to the ballot, sorry, did you have a question?
Yeah, if you wish.
Oh, yeah, that'd be.
Or if you're more comfortable finishing out your presentation.
Prefer to have them as we go,
Yes,
save
ma'am.
time.
When you talk about more specific, I know the value of being very general, but when you put that amount of money out there and you don't say or estimate what it's going to cost someone in this community, is that the kind of thing you would be more specific, or would that be in the pamphlet?
Mayor, members of the council, that's a great question. Let's get to the pamphlet, and I think you'll see that will be included in the pamphlet. That wouldn't be included in the question. The question is really, you're going to borrow X million dollars, and what are you going to do with that X million dollars?
So what are you asking us, do you need to be more specific in the pamphlet, is what you're asking us, not as per the question?
Well, as to the use of the bond money,
Okay.
what you consider to be the projects, the question is where you need to be specific there. And so right now, the question is very broad. Do you want to have the question more specific? Do you want to have the questions be broad, but say, including but not limited to, for instance, if you think that the voters are going to look at that and be interested in that kind of language? Again, this is where you end up in terms of what we're going to have in terms of permission as we go forward. The informational pamphlet, as I keep saying, is aspirational. It's our best guess. Here's what we expect is going to happen, both in terms of what councilperson just asked, but also other things that you'll see are left blank in there right now. So again, none of these things need to be decided tonight. It's just food for thought. Take it, look at it, hopefully give staff some feedback. We've got time, and we've built time into the schedule to have further discussion about it.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm not clear, in this community, putting a general amount out there with that broad of language, maybe people will read the pamphlet, maybe they won't. And did you just answer that under no circumstances would you estimate the amount? Or are you telling me that you always just allow that to be in the pamphlet?
Certain things have to be in the ballot question by law. So the principal amount of the bonds, for instance, will be in the ballot question.
Okay, but questions like how much it might cost someone would only be in the pamphlet?
Yes, Mayor, members of the council. I'll point that out to you where that's going to be in the pamphlet when we get there, but that will be in the
Yeah,
pamphlet.
that was my question, because if somebody doesn't read the pamphlet, all they're going to have is what's on the ballot.
Right, but when we get to the pamphlet, I'll explain the purpose of the pamphlet. And
I understand that.
Okay.
It's just, when you were asking if something needed to be more specific, I'm just asking what our allowances are in terms of the language on the voting on the question.
Sure. And again, maybe it makes sense to put in the question to run water and sewer lines up 89A. That's something you guys need to think about. Is that the kind of specificity you want in the question? Yes or no? Or is what we've said here enough that staff has enough flexibility they need to do what they need to do, and the community is comfortable enough allowing that amount of flexibility?
The only heartburn I had with the first pass at the bond question or the ballot question on page 63, and I've already spoken with Mr. Reeder on it, is halfway down in the ballot question where it says including necessary related interests in real estate appurtenances, vehicles and equipment. And I thought, if our citizens read that and they say the mayor wants a new Mercedes-Benz, that will not go well. So, but that was corrected later on in the pamphlets.
Sure. Mayor, members of the council, remember all this is always subject to what's legally
You bet.
allowed, and
You bet.
unfortunately, we couldn't get you a Mercedes even if we wanted to, not that you probably
You bet.
deserve one. But, so anyway, that's the ballot question. What's actually going to be on the ballot probably is the tag form of question that's below the ballot question, because there won't be room on the ballot for that whole question. So the tag versions, why we prepare those in advance is, that's what's actually, and you all vote, so you're used to that. This is what the voters will see, or some form of it is what the voters will see when they go to the ballot booth. For a long time, we actually used to publish notice and post notices of elections, which was sort of silly because it didn't give any information. I mean, basically, we'd run advertisements in the newspaper that said, hear ye, on such and such a date, we're going to hold an election. Here's the ballot question, show up and vote. And we would post notices as well as do the publication. Probably 12 or more years ago, the legislature pushed us towards using this informational pamphlet as opposed to that sort of notification. Informational pamphlet gets mailed to every residence in the city that has a qualified elector, so you don't get multiple copies of the pamphlet if you have more than one voter living there, just one per residence for qualified electors. The informational pamphlet is driven by statute. So what's here in terms of the questions that are being addressed, the information that's being provided, is not a list that I came up with. It's driven by state law.
Okay.
And so within the parameters established by state law, we're hoping that you will help staff help us figure out how to best answer the questions. So just running through quickly, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. The introductory couple of paragraphs are what we typically see. It's going to be an election. Here's where it's held. There are several places where I've left fairly lengthy blanks. Again, the question being, how do we want to describe what the purpose of the election is going to be? Do we want to get down into the weeds in terms of real specifics? You can in the informational pamphlet beyond what you did in the ballot question. That's fine, as long as you're pretty comfortable with what you're going to do. Again, we try to remind people, because it's important, that these are property tax-driven bonds. Mr. Reeder's mentioned that to you, payable from secondary property taxes. That's important. I'm going to get to the councilperson's question about where we tell them about how much it's going to cost them. But again, same thing. A lot of this is redundant. The statute just sets it up that way. What are we going to use the bond money for? The amount of the authorization, the interest rate. There's a whole section in my pagination. It's page B3. I'm not sure how it's numbered in yours. It says estimated taxpayer cost. So if you see the introduction there, that's language that's explanatory, hopefully. But to the councilperson's question, if you look at the next page, we will fill in there as we develop the pamphlet what our best estimate is of what it's going to cost each of the folks in these categories in terms of property taxes. Estimated annual cost, estimated monthly cost. So if you are living in an owner-occupied residential property, which is assessed for property tax purposes at 10%, we will typically use, and we don't have to, but we'll typically use 3 values in that first column to the left. So we'll have $100,000 full cash value. We'll have the average, and then maybe we'll have $250,000. We'll show them what their secondary assessed valuation is once we apply the assessment ratio. And then based on an estimated tax rate, and I'll show you how we get to that in a minute, we show them what the estimated annual cost and the monthly cost will be. So to the councilperson's question, we will tell them, based on our best guess today, with certain assumptions, what it's going to cost them on an annual and monthly basis. If they own a single-family residence, if they own agricultural property, if they own commercial property. That will be in the pamphlet. It'll be in the next version that we provide to the mayor and council before you approve it.
Okay.
So all that information will be provided there. Again, you can see at the top of B5, we're very careful with assumptions. We want them to know what we've assumed before we came up with those tax rates. So we tell them which values we use. We tell them, it's based on current assessment ratios, that sort of thing. There are, again, some other things we're required to tell them by statute. What are going to be the costs of issuance? what's the current amount of debt outstanding for the political subdivision. In your case, you have no general obligation debt outstanding. We tell them that so that they're aware of it. We tell them what their constitutional debt limit is. In Arizona, the debt limit's 26% of, a total of 26% of your secondary assessed valuation. So we have to give them that information. If you look at the next 2 pages, there's, again, I wish it was less information, but this is all fairly complicated stuff. We've boiled it down as far as we can here, and again, all these blanks will be filled in. But if you turn to what's my page B7, this open schedule with the principal and interest, those columns on it, I don't know if you see the page I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's page 76 in our pamphlet.
So on this page, we will back into how we came up with those tax rates and those monthly and annual tax costs that I showed you a few minutes ago. So we'll actually assume a bond issue. Here, we're going to issue this amount of bonds. It's going to cost this much in terms of principal per year. We estimate the interest rate at this based on our best assumptions today. Based on those 2 things and the secondary assessed valuation that we're estimating, here's what we anticipate the debt service cost to be, and that's what Mr. Reeder uses to derive the estimated annual and monthly tax bills that we pointed to earlier. So this schedule will be filled with our best guess at the time that we provide this to you for your approval. We leave room for staff to make corrections in case, we're going through this all the time, checking numbers, assumptions change, we're working with estimates on assessed valuation, that thing, and that sort of thing. But we try to get as close as we can to our best guess as to what we should be telling the voters at the time we ask them for authorization to issue the bonds.
Excellent.
Question, sorry?
Any questions so far?
So there's then, after that, information county elections requires us to provide where their polling place will be, when the polling place is open, how they get absentee early ballot information if they want it. Incorrect address there, we'll correct that. We tell them, depending on how many polling places you're going to have for the election, and we'll be working with staff and county elections and a fellow named Bill Doyle, who runs an operation called Election Operations Services, to get all that information correct. And it'll even tell them on the back panel where their polling place is, and you guys have seen that when you've voted in past elections based on pamphlets that you've received. Last year, the school district went through this process, but I believe they used a mail ballot only. But you should have gotten a similar document in terms of what the school district did last year for their bond election.
Okay. Just a brief question, regressing to page B5, about a third of the way up from the bottom. In brackets there, it says amount of proposed bond authorization exceeds the town's constitutional debt limit. You sort of breezed past that insofar as we'll be letting the taxpayers know that we have not exceeded that constitutional limit, correct?
Mayor, members of the council, that's a correct point.
Okay.
Under Arizona law, you can actually authorize more debt than at the point in time you have it authorized, you could actually issue, based on that 26% debt limit I mentioned to you. If we were going to do that, and I don't think Mr. Reeder has plans for us to do that at this point, if we were going to do that, we have to tell the voters we're going to do that. So that's why it's there in brackets with the question marks, because again, this is a draft document, very much at draft stage. We're looking at feedback not only from you and staff, but also the other consultants involved in this process. So I drafted this and provided it. Mr. Reeder really hasn't had a chance to review it thoroughly. He's already given me some comments on the ballot question in terms of what he thinks the correct parameters should be in terms of max annual or max interest rate and max term that will change in the next draft.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So in closing, again, this is a draft document. I'm really glad you guys are looking at it in advance. I know from working with the community for a long time, this has been a subject of discussion, how these things should be done, what's the best way to finance them for a long time. And it's, I think, important that now that we've kind of reached this point, that we spend some time looking at this document, spend some time looking at the ballot question, spend some time presenting to the community what we're planning to do. Again, that presentation in connection with the call of the election has to be content neutral, so we have to be careful. We can't quote-unquote cheerlead too much. We got to give them the facts, and hopefully the community will pick it up, pro or con, and run with it from there. But that's our purpose, and we hope that you'll provide some feedback to us and the staff in that respect.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Caviezel.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, any more questions for Michael? I just had like 3 points I just wanted to chat with you about very briefly, if I may. First of all, the budget we're working with right now is about 13.5 million. I think does that number sound right to you all? And, you know, it's kind of broken down. The Prescott purchase about 4.1 million, Wilhoit about 100,000, purchase of the wastewater treatment plant about 3,030,000. These are the latest numbers. They could change a little bit. And then Highway 89 water, Highway 89 wastewater, about 3.1 million each. So those are kind of the parameters. All add up to about 13.5 million. It's my understanding that there's a plenty of construction contingency in there. So there's hopefully this will be a high dollar amount. One of the things I wanted to point out is relative to the acquisition of the utilities, we're going to be required to utilize the WIFA program. We're going to access the WIFA program, as you recall, okay? And we have to because that's a WIFA requirement relative to the acquisition of utilities. So as I think I shared with you, Mr. Duffy and I are working very closely with WIFA, and you're going to consider a resolution tonight, an authorization resolution, which will allow us to get more paperwork into WIFA, so WIFA can tell us, hopefully before we print the voter pamphlet, the extent to which you would qualify for some grant funds, okay? And to what extent and what kind of an interest rate will they give us, because as you know, they subsidize the interest rate. So we're hoping over the next 30 days or so, we're going to have some potentially good news on that front. So I wanted to just give you that as a quick reminder. As it relates to Highway 89, because that's new money construction, we are not required to utilize the WIFA program, okay? So in that case, we can maybe go out, stretch it out longer, or if we want to. I think we're going to plan on using WIFA, but I just wanted to kind of share with you that it is a requirement to use WIFA relative to the acquisition. It's not a requirement for 89A, although with forgivable principal, which we're hoping to get, and low interest rate, we'll probably combine them all into one, okay? So on the ballot question real quick, this is why this came up. We're probably going to have an interest rate in here of not to exceed 7%. Again, that gets us back to the wiggle room. We're hoping we're going to borrow in the 2 to 3% range, depending upon what WIFA tells us. But in the ballot question, we're going to have wiggle room in there, so bear with us on that. The amortization period will probably be not to exceed 25 years, again, to give us some potential wiggle room if we need it. So I wanted to share those with you. Solicitation of pro and con statements, Mike, can you share with the council how that might work relative to their potential involvement in that, on the solicitation of pro and cons?
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't mention that. If you notice, there is a spot in the informational pamphlet at the end, arguments for and against. And basically what we'll do is we'll announce when you formally adopt the resolution, we'll announce when pro and con statements have to be provided. We'll publish in the newspaper and post in all the places you post notices of regular meetings the fact that pro and con statements will be a possibility from citizens. Anybody can submit a pro or con statement, and you know it's always interesting to see whether or not you'll get any or not. So, as Mr. Reeder mentioned, that is something we will help staff provide for.
Okay, Ms. Hatch, you had
I
a
believe in the
question?
past, there's been a charge for pro and con statements. Is that not correct?
There is a charge under state law for certain school district kinds of questions, but typically cities and towns, unless staff has something in place that I'm not aware of, typically cities and towns don't charge for submission of pro and con statements in the pamphlet.
Okay.
So are they obligated to take as many as are submitted?
Yeah,
or-
unfortunately, you are. There is a limit on school district override elections, but there's no similar limitation in the laws that apply to these kind of elections.
Okay, thank you. Any other follow-ups? Are we good?
No, I'm good. I just wanted that clarified for the public.
You bet. Any questions on this side?
Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
one more.
Yes, sir.
I handed out, I apologize, we wanted to, this is a City of Flagstaff 2012 General Obligation Bond Election Voter Pamphlet, $26 million of general obligation bonds taken to the voters. I believe it, did it pass, Mike? Do you remember this? So I thought this was a pretty well-done pamphlet, and if you'll notice, it's in a question and answer type format.
And one of the things that we're going to ask Mr. Cafizo and Phyllis and the legal side of the equation is to maybe allow us, if this is your preference, is to maybe do a question and answer type format as it relates to the town of Chino Valley.
Okay.
So I just wanted to share with you that, and we've done that before, I personally think that is a way to really educate people on a kind of a complicated subject matter. So take a look at this, and obviously we're going to be spending some more time together prior to the call for the election, and we'll start to get this pamphlet in order. And we want you to review it, and we want your input and staff's input, and we want the process to go as smooth as possible out there, and we know you do, and obviously staff does, and that's why we're here way in advance of when all this stuff is generally done. So with that, I know you got a late meeting. Glad to answer any questions, and if not, we'll get out of your hair and look
Okay.
forward to seeing you soon. Yes, sir.
Do we have any parting questions for yes, sir?
What's our next step, Mr. Reader, for the council?
Okay, I think the next step, maybe we've talked to Mr. Smith about the date that you will feel comfortable to actually formally call the election. And in that scenario, you'll have Mr. Cafizo's resolution. You have a draft in front of you. The resolution will include the final ballot question. You'll review it. You'll be able to provide input on it. My guess is that Mike and Paul generally like a voter pamphlet to be in reasonably draft form. Is that? So over the next probably 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to start putting together a voter pamphlet in reasonably final form, probably not final. And then we will come in front of you probably, I think Bill Doyle said our deadline is June 2nd. Mr. Smith, that's my recollection, but may want the council, July 2nd. May want the council to call it sometime, maybe, I think, in June. I'll leave that up to Mr. Smith in terms of when that formal call would take place.
All right.
So we're probably looking at a study session somewhere to discuss these items?
Okay, I was going to announce that we're having June 5th, a bond study session, and in that we'll be looking both at the voter pamphlet and at the ballot question, and if at all possible, a resolution to let the town know the parameters that we're working with. Did you have a question, ma'am?
I do. Going back to a statement Mr. Cafizo made, that no GO debt outstanding. You remember that? Okay, does that also include the fact that you will say that the town does have 20 million plus in other debts?
Mayor, members of the council, we're not required to do that by state law. We're only required to indicate the amount of secondary property tax secured debt that we have outstanding. So we're not required, again, we could include something in the pamphlet if council felt it was appropriate.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do want to say, Mr. Reader provided the Flagstaff pamphlet. That was an election that I worked on last year. It did pass. Just a bit of caution, the legislature has tightened down on us in the last session in terms of what we can do and not do, so we'll have to take a look at what he's proposing. Mr. Reader and I always have a friendly push-pull sort of thing, because he's a little bit more of an advocate, and I'm a little bit more on the defensive side on these things, which is good. I mean, that gets you a good balance and things, but that one did go well for them, and they've had a rocky history in terms of not getting them all passed, so that's good.
All right.
Thank you.
Ms. Hatch, you had a question. Please
I don't know if it's appropriate to ask this or not, and we've been cautioned that once it's been done, we can't, of course, take a position one way or the other. I'm wondering about the staff and to the extent to which they could assist a pro-group or a group that's against it. To what extent may our staff assist them? May they only provide them with this basic information and not make suggestions to them?
Mm-hmm. Mayor, members of the council, there are a number of do's and don'ts we typically go over. We'll be glad to go over those in a work study session if you want us to. Generally, the resources of the city cannot be used, city or town cannot be used in support or opposition to an election. That includes staff time, includes use of anything you can imagine that's paid for by the city's general fund. So copying machines, I mean, even using interoffice mailboxes can create problems. Use of computer-generated mailing lists that you may have available, stuffing utility bills, anything like that can be a problem.
Staff time.
Staff time cannot be used to advocate for or against
Or to
passage of
assist
an
one
election.
side or the other than to provide basic information.
Basic information can be provided if it's completely content neutral, and that can get on a slippery slope pretty quick. I mean, you know, it's real hard to be content neutral, for instance, if your sewage plant is overflowing and you can just state the facts, and my experience is that staff folks are pretty good at doing that. Mayor and council are politicians, and politicians can say anything they want. We hope that doesn't occur at public meetings because that's not the proper venue, but in your capacity as politicians, you're free to say anything you want to. The higher up in city hierarchy you go, the more difficult it gets for staff people to speak for or against the election. For instance, a lot of folks would argue that the city manager is probably a full-time position. So it's real hard for him to say, I'm on my off hours now, and I want to tell you during my off hours that I'm in favor of the bond election, and here's why, and to cheerlead for the bond election. That said, on the other hand, he could go to, say, a Rotary Club meeting, and as long as he stays on task and stays content neutral, can talk about factual stuff related to the bond election. We're proposing $13.5 million. We want to use it for all the things that Mr. Reeder just outlined more articulately than I did. Here's what we are proposing. Go get an informational pamphlet if you want more information. So there's a fine line there. Most folks, you know, when they've crossed it. You know, cheerleading is one thing. Content neutral information is another thing.
Just briefly, Mr. Cafiso, for our audience's edification, we've been notified by our town's attorney. We've got a lengthy looked like the LA phone book on things that we can't do. So, but I wanted our audience to know that we're not just finding out about this tonight. This is just some clarification. So, thank you.
Well, my question was as to staff. I know what we're supposed to do.
Right, but it spoke to staff. It really did.
How do I know? I got the letter to myself, you know.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it. June 5th, we will be having a study session on the voter pamphlet and on the ballot. We have received a great deal of information. We have some folks here that came here to speak on the bond issue, I would imagine. Do we have anyone from the audience that wishes to speak before we move on to our next items? No? Okay. All right. Returning to our agenda. Item G, we looked at the language, and we've got a study session ahead of us. I don't believe we have to do any action tonight. We simply have received a report. Item E was consideration and possible action to amend section 4.21.7 temporary signs and section 4.21-11 prohibited signs. See, I read all the numbers right. I'll get fired from Mothers Against Dyslexia. Anyway, prohibited signs, adoption of ordinance 10-726 with modifications. Ms. Mayday.
Yes, before you, Mayor and Council, you have a draft ordinance for revising the language in section 4.21.7 temporary signs and 4.21.11 prohibited signs. This has had a long history over the last couple of years with the business community in being able to use portable signs and banners. And previously, the action has been to temporarily suspend portions of the UDO. There have been some issues with that, and this ordinance, first of all, generally you just amend the UDO. And then the ordinance expired in January, and that's what's kind of brought this about, because we've received a great deal of feedback from the business community about the impact it's had on their business. In fact, we do have a couple of people here that wanted a chance to speak to this. That being said, when we initially started this process, I took the old ordinance that had previously been in force and amended it. And when I discussed this with Phyllis, her preference is to come back with a little bit different version of the same language, so that we're amending the UDO rather than passing an ordinance temporarily suspending.
Okay.
It got confusing for me, going back and forth and around and around. In any event, there have been some discussions about about making these changes permanent, simply because the business community, as our guests here this evening can talk about, have really had negative effect as a result of the termination of the previous ordinance and the code enforcement actions to stop the use of these signs and banners. When the construction on State Route 89 first started, the council adopted this ordinance so that we could set some of these rules aside and help the businesses out. And since that has since the construction is now complete, the question has been, do we really need to bring these back? Again, based on the feedback we received from the business community, they really wanted us to reconsider these. So this language basically talks about the changes that we would like to see made. We did talk about this at length in planning and zoning. We had a discussion item before we even went to a public hearing so that we could hash out some of the language that we wanted in there at that time. So the summary of the changes is that businesses would be allowed one type of temporary signage at a time, in addition to the signage they already have. The sign, the temporary sign permits must be obtained from Development Services Department. It's $5 a month, paid for on an annual basis. There are parts that need to be stricken because we talk about, first, we're not going to do these anymore, but then we are. And then there was a whole long laundry list of places that you could or could not have portable signs. And the gist of it is they can't obstruct the public right-of-way. So we took all of the other out and just said public rights-of-way. We are going to strike section 4.21.11 in its entirety, is that prohibition directly conflicts with the regulation of real estate signage outlined somewhere else in the UDO in section 421.7D4. And we had initially considered terminating this on January 1st, 2016, or upon the revision of the sign ordinance, which is something that we are planning on doing in the next 12 months. But I think that if we went ahead and made these changes permanent and then redid the rest of the ordinance later on, it would give the business community the immediate relief that they need.
Okay.
So like I said, I'd be happy to answer any questions. We do have members of the community here, and I would suggest that we let the members speak and then table this to the June 10th meeting for final consideration.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Ms. Hatch, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just clarifying that the resolution's going to be to amend the UDO, is that correct?
Correct.
And I
Rather
just
than
want to clarify,
adopt.
we're not going to do it, we're just hearing from the public?
Yes. So we're going to come back with better language than what we've got here. It will be the same changes, except it will be amending the UDO rather than an independent ordinance. The previous ordinances that were passed have never been put into the UDO, so nobody even knows that those changes have been made. So we're trying to fix that.
That's so strange that the UDO would need repair or
I know.
any of that.
Every time I open it.
Yes, ma'am. When you said portions of it are confusing, I had trouble not smiling. Any questions from this side of council? Any questions from this side? Thank you, Ms. Mayday.
Yes.
We'll hear from our public, okay? Yes, ma'am. Norma, would you please come up? And state your name.
My name is Norma Bennett. Everybody knows me as Bertie. I've been in business 30 years. I am very much in favor of the flag signs, and in fact, I might suggest that council put up a couple flag signs out here, ones that identify where the driveway is, and it might say council meeting Tuesday at 6 o'clock, and you might have more people coming. Put it up a week ahead of time, but you have to pay your $5 a month. My business increased substantially once I put my flag sign up. I was very, very pleased because several people had come in and said, God, I've been looking for you and looking for you, but I'm close to a busy intersection and they just drive right past, watching for what car might hit them, you know. But it is a very good form of advertising. It's unobtrusive. You can see it from a distance, and most towns don't have a 45-mile-an-hour speed zone. And I just would like to encourage you to pass that. I don't mind paying the $5 a month. Any way you can get my money, I know you're happy.
Thank you.
So please consider letting everyone have a flag sign.
Okay, thank you. Always a pleasure. Yes, sir, did you have something?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
My name is David Tinsley. I'm the owner, proprietor of Statuesque here in Chino Valley. And it's a new business, and I wanted to point out that I could have located this business anywhere. I live in Dewey, and I've talked with Dewey. I spoke with everybody in Prescott Valley, and Chino Valley, and one of the considerations was signage. I spoke with Robert Smith in regards to solar lighting, Ruth Mayday many times in regards to locating here, Tim Kittel, I think his name is, Dan Trout, in regards, before I even opened the business, because I wanted to learn about the city, what your rules are, and I don't know, council, what your backgrounds are, if any of you have been entrepreneurs before. As an entrepreneur right now, starting this new business, I've been in business since I was like 9 years old. I'm putting in back again my 80 to 100-hour weeks. And the most important thing to a business is signage. I'm now in the process of spending thousands of dollars a month in advertising to draw people to Chino Valley. This will be radio campaigns, all types of advertising to draw them here. There's two types of signs. There's directional signs and informational signs. I don't have the ability right now to do billboards. There's just not enough of them up here. I have done as much as I can on advertising, and signage is everything. And the sign that I proposed originally was a multi-business sign, which states the name of my company and the products that we carry. And so signage is a #1 consideration for a business in any type of community, and I hope you all will consider that in your decisions going forward. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Any others from our public? He's the guy I wanted to get a statue of you made.
It'd be a blank.
It'd be blank, all right. Okay, if there's, is there any discussion between council? All right, the chair would entertain a motion to, place it on our next agenda?
Move that we place this item on the next agenda with a resolution.
Okay.
Second.
Yes, ma'am. Or do we need to? have
Mayor
a-
Marley, it would be an ordinance, not a resolution.
Okay, an ordinance.
I
okay.
take that back, an ordinance.
Okay. And we have a second for that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. It'll be on our June the 10th meeting, I believe. Item F has been pulled, I believe. Okay. Okay. No sweat. Planning and zoning can meet on that one. Item G, we have already dealt with. Item H, consideration and possible action to approve Resolution 14-1037, authorizing the application for a Clean Water State Revolving Fund, CWSRF loan from the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority of Arizona, and Resolution 14-1038, authorizing the application for a Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, DWSRF loan from the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority of Arizona. Mr. Duffy is gone, I take it.
Hopefully, Mayor, we can locate him It's my understanding that to access the funding that might be made possible by the bond and ballot issue, we need to file this paperwork with CWSRF.
Okay.
It does not commit the town to borrowing funds,
Right.
but it does complete the paperwork trail that's necessary for the town to be ready to do that should the voters decide it is appropriate.
You bet. I spoke with Mr. Duffy earlier, and he indicated this doesn't obligate us to the funds. It's simply filling out the paperwork. Mr. Duffy?
Yes, that's correct. Sorry for that, Mr.
No
Mayor and
problem.
Council. Actually, and this is our next step with WIFA. They want us to go ahead and approve these two resolutions. This will allow us to take all their due diligence to their board of directors, get our funding pre-approved, but most importantly, as Mr. Reeder said, get our interest rate determined and our grant funds or our forgivable principal amount determined. So we'll have that for the ballot. We're hoping that we'll make the June 18th board meeting, but a worst-case scenario, if everything doesn't get lined up, it'll be August 20th.
Okay. Were there any questions for Mr. Duffy on this? No. Chair would entertain a motion.
Move to approve resolution number 141037 and 141038.
Okay.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item I, consideration and possible action to approve Resolution 14-1036, requesting the legislature appropriate $20 million to the Greater Arizona Development Authority Infrastructure Fund and insulate the fund from future sweeps. That's a nice way of putting that, Mr. Duffy.
Sounds a lot like the HERF funds in a way.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Actually, Julie Richards, who is a program consultant with GATA, contacted us, and Tom Bell, she recommended that she contact the town of Chino Valley and see if we'd like to support this resolution for basically reestablishing GATA. GATA is now being administered by WIFA because it is a state revolving loan fund, and so it makes sort of sense because you have the clean water and the drinking water at WIFA, which are revolving loan funds, and then GATA, which used to be under the Department of Commerce, is now being administered, taking the WIFA staff is there competent and capable of running it. The difference between WIFA and GATA is WIFA can only finance drinking water and clean water or wastewater projects. But communities have other needs like, recreational, administrative building, police and fire, those type of long-term projects. And that's where GATA comes into the picture. They actually took the last $20 million that they had appropriated, and what they do is they use that as sort of as leverage to borrow more money, or as a guarantee. They say, we got $20 million in the bank, we want to go out and borrow $100 million and do these projects. These communities are all going to pay for them, and that helps shore up that debt. It's like just a guarantee it's going to be paid. And they were actually able to leverage the last $20 million into 84 projects across the state for a total of $575 million. And in fact, Chino Valley was one of those recipients on a prior loan. And so basically what they're asking us to do now is just to recommend support the legislature, recommend to the legislature that they go ahead and finance another $20 million for GATA to continue the program.
Okay.
And we are joining Queen Creek and Apache Junction, have already done it, and of course our town attorney has reviewed the resolution and given her thoughts.
Okay. Any questions on this side? As you pointed out, you could have written HERF in there. It was.
Oh, and Mr. Mayor, they might need to see you personally at a meeting in Phoenix in a few weeks, just in case. I don't know for sure.
I'm voting no. I don't ever want to go to Phoenix again. Okay.
I'm voting yes for that reason.
All right. If there's no further questions, the chair would entertain a motion.
Move to approve resolution number 141036.
Second it.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item J, consideration and possible action to approve a proposal and scope of work with Elliott D. Pollock and Company to perform economic development analysis and create an economic development plan for the town of Chino Valley. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mayor Marley. At council's last study session, we had an opportunity to speak about the upcoming bond process, the general plan, and economic development in the town. And one of the questions that I thought was most poignant was Councilmember Croft's question, what do we do now? What do we do next? Well, one of the things we need to do is create an economic development plan that gives us direction and strategy for moving forward. If we go to the trouble to update the UDO in the next budget session and create permit processes that are friendly, and if we go to the trouble to adopt the new general plan, the general plan update, and go to the trouble to create funding to put pipes in the ground on 89, but we neglect to plan for the development of that area, we're remiss in using the maximum of efficiency and effectiveness that we can generate for our town. Mr. Pollock's firm has agreed to help us with this work and has agreed to phase his work so that some of it could be completed prior to the call to election or the ballot vote. That would provide economic development impact information that people could use to better understand why we're asking for the public's money to put pipe in the ground. So this proposal before you is actually one of 3 phases. The first phase has been complete. They provided feedback and analysis of the ballot issue itself, the structure of it. The second phase would be what we've been talking about, the actual development of some reports and analysis and impact on what the ballot issue might bring to the town of Chino Valley. And the final third phase would be after the ballot initiative, whether it is passed or not, moving forward with an economic development plan to help the town begin to grow its local economy. The total cost for the proposal is $14,000, with $7,000 being due this year and $7,000 being due next year. Are there any questions?
All right. Any questions from this side? Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Item 4, billing procedures, second paragraph. In addition, you will be billed monthly for all costs and expenses incurred on your behalf, including printing and photocopying charges, not to exceed 10 cents per se, long-distance charges, transportation, so on and so forth. Is that included in the $14,000, or are we looking at an additional amount of money? That could add up to a substantial amount of money, could eat through everything real quickly.
My understanding from reading the agreement is that while we may be billed monthly for costs and expenses incurred on our behalf, the total professional fees for the assignment are $14,000.
Yeah, but professional fees aren't defined, and then there's this in addition. I'm just asking, you don't know for sure?
Well, it's a good question. Does council have a suggestion on how we could fix that?
I would just say that the total cost is $14,000, this amount included in there somewhere. This is, I would add a sentence that says, this amount is included in the $14,000. The last sentence, in addition, blah, 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 and I would just add after the word cost, this amount is included as part of the $14,000.
Okay. Mr. Turner, you had something?
Could we do something as simple as a not to exceed?
Yeah. We could put that in the motion itself, not to exceed 14,000, and then
The total amount not to exceed
total amount not to
14,000,
exceed.
including printing, photocopying, and including the
total.
second paragraph of
Just total 14,000. It won't go over 14.
Well, you need to make it clear, because although it says 14,000 in paragraph 3, then in 4 it says in addition.
Right.
So you need to make it clear that those photocopying, where there's doubt that those photocopying, et cetera, is included in that 14,000.
Yes, ma'am, I appreciate that, but I believe if we did it as a motion and the motion was to approve this total amount not to exceed 14,000. Really, no matter what they wanted to bill, we only authorized 14,000, and that's the ceiling for it. Would that be correct, Ms. Smiley? If we only as a council authorize $14,000 total, then that pretty well caps it, because the money can't be spent outside of our authorization.
Well, the town manager can move around money up to 50,000.
I would hope that he wouldn't do that without letting us know anyway. Excuse me for a second. Ms. McKee, you have a
Could we
question?
include total being 14,000, including any ancillary costs?
I don't know. I think Mr. Turner's not to exceed would be the best way. But Ms. Smiley, do you have any advice on this? Any thoughts?
Mayor Marley, I would say that the way the contract is written, it says total professional fees for this assignment are $14,000. If you want to include those ancillary costs and expenses incurred on behalf of the town, in that $14,000, you need to put it in the contract, and it can either be added to fees, or it can be a modification of this number 4, where you're billed for all costs and expenses incurred on your behalf, including printing and photocopying charges not to exceed 10 cents per page, long distance charges. Such costs shall be included in the $14,000 in fees set forth in paragraph 3, something to that effect, if that's the council's desire.
So we would approve the contract with those modifications, I guess?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And that way, if Mr. Pollock and company wanted the 14,000 as the base and additional costs above and beyond that, then this would have to come back to council again. Okay. We could do that. The chair would
Motion to
entertain
approve the
that
proposal
motion.
and scope of work with Elliott D. Pollock and Company to perform economic development analysis and create an economic development plan for the town of Chino Valley, not to exceed $14,000, and including all ancillary costs.
With modifications in the contract?
And the contract will be modified to state so.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item K, consideration and possible action to review and approve town manager's goals. I believe we've all had time to review these. We've all hashed them over for hours on end ad nauseum. Does anybody have any questions or statements beyond that?
I do. Item 1 and item 6 do not have a deadline on them.
Item 1 and item 6.
I have never seen a goal without a deadline. But if you want to do that, that's fine. So when does this have to be done by?
We did discuss the date for the first one.
Let's say number 1, develop and bring to council for approval agreement for purchase of the sewer plant. Is that in 2014, 3014, or where? So I think there needs to be a completion date.
We did discuss a date.
Hmm.
We had a discussion as to whether that should be before the bond election or after, and it was made clear that they thought it would be done before.
Okay.
I remember that specifically because I thought they were talking about after the bond election, but he was made clear that it was planned before that, so.
For the purchase of the sewer plant. Well, the bond election is in November, and he's, I believe, in the process of this. Yes, ma'am.
I think because it says for the approval of the agreement, it would not for the finalization of it.
Right,
was
just to bring it to the council. But the
So when do we
the
wanna
vice
have this
mayor
to come?
would like to have
I
this,
think-
have a date for this to come. Did you have a suggestion, sir?
Well, I'm remembering the conversation, and I believe we left a date off of it. I don't think we
I think we
fixed
would-
a date to it,
Yeah.
to leave some flexibility
To
for
leave
that
flexibility?
agreement to be brought to the table.
Okay.
It's sometime before the bond election, but I think we asked the town manager what he wanted on it, and we were gonna go by whatever he decided. But it was before the bond election, because I thought it would be afterwards.
Yeah.
You might ask him what he would suggest.
Mr. Smith, did you have a suggested date on this?
Yes, sir. I feel very comfortable bringing this to you before the bond election. It's my goal to have this on your agenda at your next meeting.
Okay.
So I have formative drafts for this, and if I cannot bring it June 10, it will be on your agenda, your second meeting in June. So
Well, our agendas are sort of blossoming out like a giant mushroom cloud. How about, if it please the
August 1st?
council, we simply say before the bond election and go with it?
Works for me.
Okay, before the bond election.
And Mayor?
And item 6, I believe we simply left open without a date on it. Is that something, Vice Mayor, that you felt strongly we need to have a
You do need to
date
have a date.
specific on that?
Need to have a date on
Okay.
it somewhere.
I would ask the town manager what he suggests.
Yes.
If that's okay with the mayor.
You bet, you bet. I just want to be out here by Thursday, okay? It's really important to me.
Which Thursday?
Next Thursday, next Thursday.
I'm very comfortable bringing that before the November election as well. The feasibility analysis is light lifting compared to the work council will need to consider for the item.
Okay.
And Mayor, I did have one comment on goal number 2. An alternative has emerged recently that we were able to negotiate for this item that provides additional flexibility. The operation and maintenance agreement, we have worked out a way to go month to month on that. And so we can tailor fit that agreement to whatever the town's needs will be in terms of timing.
Okay.
So the hard date in that, I don't know if that's useful to you guys or not.
I think August 1st is fine, man.
Okay. All right.
I'm a happy camper.
You're a happy camper. All right. Got a 6-year-old granddaughter, ought to be out of college by the time we're done tonight, okay? All right, the chair would entertain a motion then.
Let me get back to
You sorry, dog.
consideration, but recommend to approve the town manager's goals
As
as
amended?
written, as modified.
As modified. Okay, and we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item L, consideration, discussion, and possible action regarding the review of Road 4 South Extension Project expenditures. Mr. Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I did is after the last meeting, Mr. Smith directed me to just go over and re-look at the expenditures that we spent on Road 4 South. And so what I did is I printed detailed general ledgers of the exact amount of money we spent. What I'm going to do in the future on projects like this is basically give you, come up with a standardized type of report, very similar to the format this is, of here's what the council authorized for the projects, here's what we've spent to date, here's what we've encumbered with purchase orders that we know is still coming, and here's where we're projecting the project to be at the end of the day, so that we can avoid all this confusion and all that we've gone through with this one project. So what I've done is I went through, summarized the general ledger printouts, categorized them, and summarized them on page 107 of your packet, the very last page of your packet. Essentially, what we've physically paid to date, including the right-of-way acquisition, is $460,611.05. We did have some engineering that we coded in the prior fiscal year before we actually named it as a project and assigned it an account code. We had another $31,444. We do have an estimated amount of $60,000 still coming from APS for the pole relocation. So our total projected project, less any internal staff hours, that these hard dollars that we've gone out, will have spent $552,055. Public Works came up with, I thought was a very reasonable estimate on the Public Works hours based on the number of men, the average burden rate per number of hours that they worked out there. And so I used that number of another $58,000. So the total project, including the right-of-way acquisition, was $610,550. Now, what I also did is I looked at the expenditures by category. So we knew the engineer, we knew the equipment rental, what we purchased, the trucking, the fuel, the materials. Miscellaneous items were like for testing and things like, little things like that. We have the APS pole relocation, the man hours again, and the right-of-way acquisition. So again, that comes to that $610,515. Now, the numbers that Ron presented in his 422 presentation, I took out the man hours so that we're comparing apples to apples. And what Public Works presented was a project of $550,902, broken out in phase 1, 2, 3, and the right-of-way, as you see. What I did on May 19th, a month later, and these are the numbers that we have, the latest numbers that we have, I came up with $552,000. So the discrepancy between that amount of time, and there was changes, and one of the things was fuel. Public Works doesn't have they have the invoices they submitted, but sometimes things change, you get credits and stuff like that we actually pay. So we're only off by $1,152 in total. So that's the best we can present. These are the actual hard numbers. We do not code staff salary to any of these projects. I've never seen it done, and it's typically not done in municipalities because the department's labor is budgeted wherever it is. And this town is too small to actually allocate labor hours between departments. We just don't do that. So this is as good as it gets, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any questions on this side of the council? Yes, ma'am.
I'm just trying to remember what the statute said we were allowed to spend for in-house counsel. 219?
216, I believe.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions on this side? Anything? Okay. I traveled down Road 4 South the other day and looked out towards the roundabout from it. It was pretty neat. I wanted to, since everybody on council has had their say, I'd like to say thanks to Lon Turner. This is the only time I'll be nice to him. It's late at night and nobody's watching us. Thank you, Lon, for working with the foreman out at the Deepwell Ranch and helping us to come to an agreement on what we needed to do to make that right-of-way happen. I wanted to thank Robert Smith for initiating contact with Ron James. No offense to our town's attorney, but without any attorney help, we seem to have done reasonably well. I wanted also to thank Selmer Luty for his idea of using a culvert instead of having to pour a concrete structure. I also wanted to thank Ron Gritman for his creativity in using the road impact fees to build Road 4 South. That took a lot, and I appreciate it. I also wanted to thank Ron's crew for the hard work they did, for the work outside of their class. And I wanted to thank our council for helping us to avoid some extremely costly litigation. This was one of the big clouds on the horizon when I came into office, and I hope and pray that it's cleared away. We had a lot of big items, big ticket items on the horizon when I came into office, and slowly but surely we seem to be dealing with them. The chair would now entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move that we adjourn and go home.
Okay.
Second it.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.